Hi, folks. You're very welcome back once again. And today we have another wonderful conversation with Gayle van Gils. And Gayle is a dear friend, but more importantly, perhaps, for the context of today's session, she's the author of Happier at Work. And Happier at Work, I think, is the only business book I know that has love on the cover. So really fascinated to hear Gayle's insights into this particular part of the program where we're starting to get into compassion and empathy, and I guess the role of love in the workplace. So Gayle, you're very, very welcome.
Thank you very much. It's great to see you, Deiric.
Yeah, great to see you too.
I appreciate this invitation.
And folks, we were fellow travelers on the Search Inside Yourself program a couple of years ago. So we were thrown together over a very long period of time and built up a very strong relationship. So it's for me, it's a real pleasure to be here interviewing you, Gayle. But what's interesting for me, just to get us started, Gayle, is you have been around this whole area of mindfulness and mindful leadership a long time before it was hip, a long time before it started to get the attention it's getting in the press right now. How did you come to this?
Well, it was actually a combination of the two areas of my life that I was developing the most, although at the time independently. So I've been a long-time practitioner and teacher of mindfulness and compassion meditation through the Buddhist traditions. And then the human development work, which is actually what Buddhism is, which is the psychology of how to be completely, authentically, fully yourself. Which, if you do it fully, you're awakened. That's just what the meaning of awakenment is. So anyway, so I've always
just run that past me again, just for the awakening, because some of the people who are on the program will be starting to hear these terms for the first time, and some people like me have heard them before. But I thought that was a lovely definition. So when you talk about awaken, just that definition again.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting that people probably think that enlightenment or awakenment, which are terms that are used as the pinnacle of what one would achieve in Buddhist practice, are somehow something way beyond their normal human experience. But the truth is that the whole path of practicing mindfulness, awareness, and compassion is tuning into who you already naturally are. And when you tune completely into that, you are in fact awake, awakened, or enlightened. So it's not like some other person or something you have to get. It's really the unfolding of you being more and more comfortable with the way things actually are and who you really are. Yeah. And so that is, as a teacher of mindfulness and compassion meditation for all these years, that is what I've been doing. So I was doing that in one-on-one work and in seminar work and long retreats with individuals. I also was working in the business world with an MBA with executive development, was what it was called first, before it was even called coaching, and strategic planning and training and development of individuals in a company. So without saying it, always became clear to me that self-awareness was the basis of any shift in their cultures. So I began blending in awareness work without really being able to call it mindfulness or anything else years ago. And now I say I've lived long enough to see my two worlds come together. So it's really exciting.
So you've lived through that period when it wouldn't have been hip to talk to say the M word, to say mindfulness or say meditation. In fact, that it would have been quite the opposite. Maybe even turn off some, if we want to call it, more serious business folk.
Yeah, it was definitely not something that was overtly talked about, and now it's really wonderful that the science is backing up what. Well, actually, I've learned what has happened in the brain, so we might talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, isn't it hilarious the way the West in so many things seems to catch up after 1,000 or 2 years on this stuff, and it's only when we can put our metaphorically put our fingers into the wound and verify that this works in our logical scientific world that we're prepared to accept it. It's a wonderful revolution. So you've been around this work a long time in many forms. It really informs who you are and the way you live and the way you are in the world. why in God's name did you put yourself through the pain of writing a book? And I know we were going through SIY at the time, and I don't want to give away any secrets, but I know you, like anybody else who's written a book, found, wow, it's a lot of hard work. So what was calling out to you that said you needed to write this?
Okay, so there's two things.
Okay.
The first is literally I couldn't not write the book.
Okay.
I literally had words going through my head, and I was constantly writing this book over the course of years. And it was always changing because I was changing and the world was changing, but it wouldn't stop. The words wouldn't stop. So I really had to write the book. So that's a very interesting thing that I experienced, and that actually stopped after I finished the book. It was like this relief. Anyway, so that was one reality. But the other reality was, I think what was inspiring that fact that I had all these words in my head was, as I said, all these years I've been teaching individuals how to become more self-aware, how to work with their stress, how to open their hearts, how to have a happier life, all the things I was teaching them. And then many times, almost always, these retreats would end on a Sunday afternoon. Okay. So they could go back to work on Monday. And then I would find people in tears, literally in tears, saying, how do I close back down? I can't be this vulnerable at work. I'll get crushed. Sure. Or if I feel this much at work, I'll get crushed. Or maybe I can't be this nice at work, or I'll be perceived as weak. All over and over again, there was some kind of conflict with the softening and opening that people were feeling and what they thought about their work environment.
Sure.
So I started really contemplating that, like, what the point of this is to integrate it with our life, not to have a great weekend retreat. So how could I help people address these problems that they were having in the workplace, true pain in the workplace, with the tools that they were being given through meditation and compassion? And so that was my inspiration. And that's really what I did in this book.
And as I said at the outset, and looking at the book behind you, I honestly think it's certainly the only book I know of in a business book that has a heart on the front and talks about the power of love in a sort of business environment. And I know I wouldn't have had the guts to put that on the front, and yet it's worked really, really well. The book has been a tremendous success for you. What is the sort of love, when you talk about the power of love to transform workplaces, what do you mean? Tell me what the book actually is.
I have to admit, I was being provocative there, using the love word. And I really did get a lot of pushback from my publishers and editors. Everybody said, you really don't want to use love, do you? And I said, I really do want to.
Yeah.
So this is why. I see love as the opposite of fear.
Okay.
So not love as opposite of hate. Love as opposite of fear. So in many workplaces, and particularly outdated management styles that are top down, the words, if you don't do this, are the motivating words.
Sure.
Or the number of rules about how you have to do things are very constricting. So fear constricts us. It's like a sea anemone. If you put your finger in, it closes up.
Right.
So those work environments are like sea anemones. I mean, all someone has to do is say a word to you, and this is what people were telling me. They were so uptight at work, they would just close down. And that kind of closing down is a lot of the stress and a lot of the problems that cause the poor health, that cause the prefrontal cortex not to operate properly, that get us in that fight or flight mode, and all the hormones are surging. So it's completely counterproductive, not only to a happy workplace, but to a productive workplace.
Okay.
So I wanted to show that this opening was absolutely possible and productive. So that's really the kind of love, is that opening to new ideas, opening to different people, opening to your own strengths and weaknesses and being clear about them. Just opening in all ways can only benefit the workplace and make you happier. So that's the way I'm using love.
Okay, so and I love that idea, the love as the opposite of fear, because in the second session of this program, we went through an exercise that the people on this call will remember. We called it the EI experience, and we looked at a good boss and a bad boss, and from an emotional intelligence point of view. And one of the things that characterized the bad boss really, really deeply in people's experience, and this wasn't an academic discussion, it was looking at people's direct experience, was the fear that person induced into them. And a lot of people spoke about the experience on a Sunday night or a Monday morning of the trepidation that they felt going back into the workplace. Their heart was beating, the hair was standing on the back of the neck. So they were having exactly what you're talking about, that fight or flight response to things. You're rigid.
That's exactly it. That's why I wrote the book.
So yeah.
I mean, there is a way to work with that. Each of us individually, and if leaders are listening to this, wow, you can change the environment of your company by being aware of small things you can incrementally do that will help people to relax, and individually what you can do to relax. So that's contagious too.
Okay, now just to clarify for anybody who's sitting on the call right now and they're listening to this. So we're looking at love as the opposite of fear. We're looking. Gayle is addressing herself to addressing that fear, which is so endemic in so many of the workplaces. That is getting all of our workplaces to a stage where, in all of our countries, to a stage where it's the most harmful, most toxic environment that we can be in. And we're not talking about walking around having group hugs and loving everybody we meet unconditionally. And it's actually quite different. It's addressing itself, isn't it, more to what I know is your passion, into the whole area of compassion and what the Buddhists would call loving kindness, and that area. That's kind of really your passion, and that's what to me felt to be the core of this book that was screaming out, was that unconditional, just like me attitude.
Right, and that creates a more productive workplace. I think we have to keep repeating that, because when people are shut down, they can't do their best work. So it's not, I mean, yes, you will be happier. That's the byproduct.
Sure.
But you will also be more successful.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
This
and
is
there's the critical one. and you know what? There's the critical one for selling to you and for selling to me and to selling to everybody else. That is not just about doing, if you like, the right thing or the nice thing. It's about doing something that makes an awful lot of business sense, because emotionally intelligent workplaces are more engaging and produce better results and so on.
That's great.
I don't know about you, but with a couple of books that I've written, there's always little pet pieces in them. There's always some part of it where I think that's the little part of that book that I'm most proud of. Is there any part in that where you think, oh, this was the one where I really felt, now I'm really bringing something new, fresh, and absolutely Gayle van Gils? Is there anything like that jumps out at you?
Well, I think that I'm trying to give people tremendous amount of agency.
Okay.
That they can take the courageous look at themselves, at their strengths and their weaknesses. And if they do that, then they can craft their job to be more suited to success.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I really encourage this self-awareness in terms of realizing that maybe a lot of the parts of what you're doing are not really what you're good at. So if you can align yourself more clearly in the eyes of your management with what's the benefit that you're bringing. And then, of course, there's always going to be little parts of what we do that aren't our favorite parts. But sometimes we're really in misaligned jobs. So I think that as a first step, taking that courageous look at who are you really and why is it that things are difficult for you if they are. And then also to realize that if you're a leader, that may be what's holding up other people.
Sure.
So, so I think that's really important. And also I feel like for people to understand that they really have control, again, agency to change the way their brain works, to change their own habitual patterns. So we are really, really caught in habitual patterns that hold us back. But with just small incremental efforts and little practices that I give in the book, you can actually change your brain. And when you've done that, you tune into a natural awareness and mindfulness, a natural ability to be aware of what's going on and be present, and to be able to come back from rumination, to be able to handle and have resiliency, handle what comes up from other people, because you're self-aware. So you know, wow, that situation maybe is about the other person being in a bad place.
Sure.
And so that does actually lead to compassion, because then if you're aware of that, you might wonder, even ask them, hey, can I be of help to you? That was a really sharp retort. I'm not sure where it was coming from, but is there something I could do for you? Wow, would that change the culture, right? So it's this self-awareness piece that I think is what I in so many different places, I'm bringing in and giving people agency to discover the natural awareness, the natural joy, and the natural connection they have to other people.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting, and you go back to this, and you kind of alluded to the whole neuroplasticity thing that we touched upon in the first session of this program, where we talked about it being a little bit like exercising the insula to grow that part of the brain's capability to be more normally self-aware. And folks, just so you know, Gayle's book is very much a step-by-step. First, she unpacks what the challenge is, but then it is really around micro practices and attitudes of mind and practices that are designed step-by-step to get you from A to Z. So it's not a treatise. It's not a non-academic work, but it's not academic for academic sense. It's really well written, but it's very, very practical book. So just in the last couple of minutes, if I could just ask you, there's somebody who has been around this material for so long and has so recently spent so much time thinking about it. And sorry to spring it on you, but what are for the people who are on this on this call, what are the sort of 3 key pieces of advice that you would give to somebody who is either starting on a journey to become a more mindful person, more mindful leader, or is somewhere along that journey? And what from your experience would you say are the 3 things that you'd really like them to know?
Well, first of all, that mindfulness is not something that you have to put on yourself. Mindfulness is a natural capacity.
Okay.
So we actually always pay attention to something.
Sure.
And it's just actually being able to choose where we pay attention. Okay. So that's what mindfulness is that it's a natural capacity to place our attention on something. Usually we place it on our ruminating thoughts.
Yeah.
And so becoming aware of that, and that you have a choice to bring yourself back out of rumination and be in the present moment, which is the only place you can make any changes or have any effect, is your natural human right. I think that's number 1.
Okay.
Number 2, in terms of compassion, it also is natural. And it's what has allowed our species to survive. It's why a mother loves her children. It's it's our natural instinct. On the other hand, also natural to us and part of our survival as human beings is that we banded together as families and tribes for survival.
Sure.
So we need to look at that. We need to realize that this sort of cognitive dissonance about people that look differently or think differently than us is something we need to pay attention to, because it's been in there a long time as a part of our tribal sort of mechanism of our brains. And that in today's world, we can no longer let that rule us. It just won't work. We are multicultural society. So again, we can do something about this. We can train our brain to see the humanness in each other.
Okay.
And that's the opening. Instead of the fear of the difference, we can open to looking at how are we all human beings? And how could their day be going, just like my day is going a particular way?
Sure. Okay.
And then, I mean, I really think bottom line is almost the golden rule, is treat others as you would want to be treated.
Classic, yeah. Yeah.
Because that's really the reflection of, oh, well, I guess I would say that in a way, in order to be able to do that, you have to be able to treat yourself well.
Yeah, self-compassion.
So that's why this piece of self-compassion comes before other compassion.
Sure.
It's because how you treat others is a reflection of how you treat yourself. So you have to have that, again, courage to look at the places where you're super critical and judgmental of yourself and realize you would never think that of someone else, and be as kind to yourself as you would be to someone else, and then turn it around. Yeah,
we allow ourselves to say things to ourselves that we would allow nobody else to say to us. But
well, I mean, my Genos survey is a good example of that. I was so much harder on myself than the other people.
Always, and that's something people hearing that, Gayle, will be gratified to hear it, because we're always most people in these assessments tend to be their biggest critic. But I'm really glad that you brought up the piece about self-compassion, because the feedback we always get, particularly with people who are new to compassion practices and new to Just Like Me and new to loving kindness, is I feel a little bit self-indulgent. Turning kindness upon myself. And you make a really good point. You know, you have to learn to love yourself before you can reflect that outwards. And I think that's a really strong point. But I thought the first 2 points I thought were really great. And folks, listen to what Gayle was saying. She's saying, and I'm paraphrasing Gayle, apologies, but you're just relearning something that's already natural for you. You are already mindful. It's just that you need to refocus that a little bit and make it more intentional and make it as a result of choice. So on that, Gayle, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. And as we're talking, I'm scrolling the book title and where to get it down below.
You're so kind, Deiric.
No, I mean, I have no hesitation. I love books that tell you how to go about doing what they say you should be doing. And it's a wonderfully practical book. And if you doubt me, well, then just look at the reviews on Amazon. It's absolutely knocking it out of the park. So Gayle, thank you very much. Really, really appreciate your time and your wisdom. Thanks a million. Take care.
My pleasure.